Hey, what is up guys? It's your boy Speed here, and today we're going to be going over 5 of the meta heroes, but not specifically talking how to play those heroes, but rather how to counter these meta heroes. I know you guys might be wondering to yourself after you clicked on this video, oh Speed, what happens if these heroes get nerfed, or what happens if these heroes get buffed? Well, the thing is, regardless of whether or not these heroes get buffed or nerfed, they're very strong heroes, and counters rarely change. If a hero countered a hero in 6.25, odds are they still counter them today. And so without further ado, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and of course, if you want to become absolutely broken, well, what you need to do is sign up to the GameLeap website down below right now. The reason why you should do that is because every single day we post a new video there. Content that you simply just will never get on YouTube, we post every single day to the website. It's really top tier stuff. I'm very proud of what I make over there. We also have other creators, many of my great friends who are top tier Dota players, creating guides about different heroes, different roles, different items, skill builds, talent builds, everything you need to know to get to the next rank. So if you feel a little bit lost, you're a little bit stuck, click the link down below. I'll see you guys there. And now let's get into the video. All right, getting to the first hero is Tiny. I have to cover Tiny carry because I actually am not sold that the hero is going to be completely kicked out of the meta even after its nerfs. The reason why I say that is I think team comps will still be able to be drafted around Tiny. I legitimately believe that the hero, even after a couple of number nerfs, might be good enough where, yeah, you can still pick it with Bloodlust, you can still pick it with Wolf Bite, you can still run all these like attack speed or movement speed based Tiny combos and dominate. So here's a couple of counters to deal with it. In fact, I have 4. The first one is Batrider mid. This is probably my favorite because of just how bad this matchup is for Tiny. Of course, this does require you to have to know how to play Batrider. It does require you to play a farming mid that doesn't necessarily create space for the first 10 minutes of the game. But other than that, when you hit your timing, which is specifically your Shard plus Aether Lens timing, Tiny becomes an awful hero. Now, just for a little bit of information before I get into why Batrider counters Tiny, if you're playing Tiny and you happen to be against a Batrider, what I recommend you do is you buy Satanic as fast as possible. I even think you should go basically Echo Saber, Shadow Blade into Satanic. No Silver Edge, not even BKB, just straight into Satanic. Otherwise, you will get kited, and that is the point of this matchup. Tiny is slow. Tiny doesn't have mobility. He doesn't have, he doesn't have a Purge. He doesn't have Spin. He doesn't have Mirror Image. He doesn't have, like, great attack range. It's okay, but it's not great. He doesn't have Dark Pact. He doesn't even buy a Blink Dagger anymore. Sometimes he does later into the game, but it's not his first 2 items. And therefore, Tiny doesn't really move around that quickly. As a result, Batrider can easily build up 5, 6, 7 stacks of sticky napalm on Tiny in a fight. And the reality of Batrider is he has no problem killing a 3,000 or 4,000 HP hero. He just doesn't. He just doesn't. If you have 6 or 7 stacks of sticky napalm on someone and you hit them with the Flame Break, Firefly, and Lasso, they will die. And that's kind of how this matchup works. It's tick-based damage that Tiny simply can't dispel in most games, so if you can last pick a Batrider mid and they don't have a dispel for the Tiny, you're likely going to kill him. Next up is Necro. To keep it simple, Necro beats Tiny in lane. He's one of the only heroes that deals with Tiny's natural consistent harass, right, with consistent heal. And Heartstopper Aura and Reaper Scythe are both spells that are naturally good against high HP heroes. That is why I think, in general, when you're going to pick Necro, you want to look for these strength, high HP, chip damage heroes, because that's what you're so good against. And so Tiny is the perfect example of that. We even saw a TI Necro was being used as a consistent Tiny counter, and I absolutely think being able to do 2,000 damage to Tiny with the Reaper Scythe and consistent high tick damage with Heartstopper Aura is a good enough reason to pick Necro into Tiny. Next up is Veno. Veno's ultimate does max HP per damage. You can imagine why that's good. But what I really like doing with Veno against Tiny is simply going 2-2-0. 2 points in Gale, 2 points in Poison Sting, and going from there. The reason why this is good is Tiny just is a slow hero. We talked about this a couple times. And so as a result of this, in the laning stage, if you hit him with a Gale and hit him with a Poison Sting, he slowly just gets chipped down. The hero doesn't have built-in sustain, and it generally doesn't even like to buy HP regen items. Tiny doesn't want to buy a Ring of Health. A lot of the time he doesn't even buy a stick early on into the lane. He can, of course, but it doesn't do anything against Veno. And therefore, you kind of just chip him down and there's not much you can do about it. And finally, the last thing that's good about Veno versus Tiny is, of course, a right-click hero. In general, the way to counter right-click heroes is through the cheap 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000 gold items that naturally counter these heroes. What are those items? Hood of Defiance, Heaven's Halberd, Force Staff, Ghost Scepter, and so on. These are the type of items that naturally kite out the Tinies, kite out the original burst of the Tiny, and therefore when you play Veno, if you go something like Hood into Halberd into Axe, you're going to be too tanky for Tiny to burst you in most scenarios, and you're going to be able to just kite him out in the team fight. And finally is Phoenix! As a support, being able to do a crazy amount of percentage-based damage to Tiny is insane in and of itself. Like, literally, honestly, every single one of Phoenix's spells is just straight up good against Tiny. Maybe Dive isn't that useful. In fact, Tiny is actually pretty good against Icarus Dive because of Avalanche. But Fire Spirits, Tiny has horrendous attack speed. Even later into the game, until he gets a Moonshard or an AC, his attack speed is just bad. And therefore, Fire Spirits, if you hit him with it, which is not hard to do because he doesn't move very quickly, you just destroy his attack speed. Then Sunray, right, percentage-based damage against a 4,000 HP hero is obviously going to be really good. If you don't know why, it does max HP per damage. Tiny can't really get out of the way of the Sunray, so you annihilate him. You also really want to buy a Shard as Phoenix against Tiny. In general, if Phoenix's Shard is insane, if you don't know what it is, you can cast Sunray while you're in Supernova. You can once again imagine why that's good. And finally, Tiny can't really kill Supernova. He just can't. He can't kill the egg. His attack speed's not good. I also think Echo Saber, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't work against egg. But all in all, even if it did, it doesn't really matter. This hero cannot break through the egg, and so if you can get your shard and get an egg off with a good Fire Spirit, Tiny is no threat to you, and you're a massive threat to him. One thing to consider though in this matchup is I do recommend buying Aeon Disc and Shard. The reason why is Tiny can easily burst you, as he can to most supports, so you should try to play around that. Next up, as a hero that we need to counter is Bane. So what are some Bane counters? First off is Naga Siren. As a carry, I love Naga. Bane has really popped into the meta as a position 4, and I really love this lane. The reason why is Naga naturally can send illusions at Bane. Most heroes can't really trade with Bane early on, especially carry heroes. They can't trade with Bane. Naga definitely is an exception to this. Her having like really high armor and illusions just is something Bane can't deal with. In general, Bane can't deal with units. I will say though, at least something like a boar, right, a Beastmaster boar, is maybe something Bane can kill early on, right? He can kind of click it down, click Brain Sap on it, and get rid of it. But Naga illusions, you just can't kill him as Bane. You can't. And so what you do is you just basically help your position 5 trade with the Bane. Most 5s can't trade with Bane, but you send illusions, all of a sudden you can. Also in the mid game, you have a way to get rid of sleep with your illusions. You have a way to cancel grip. And naturally, once again, Bane can't kill your illusions in the mid game, so you can kill him. Coming in at number 2 is Omni Knight. I was gonna put Abaddon originally, but I realized that I like Omni Knight a little bit more, especially in your average pub, and here's the reason. What Bane can do against Abaddon in specific is if Abaddon tries to save someone from sleep, he has to purge them. Technically, he also can just walk up and get rid of the sleep. That is the better option for Abaddon against Bane. If you're playing against Bane and you want to prevent your carry from getting slept into a grip, you shouldn't actually purge the sleep, because if you do, then he can grip the aphotic shielded target, right? It's not like it's a constant purge, it's a one-time thing. So you should do it instead as Abaddon is wake up, tank the sleep, pop your ulti, and then purge the grip. And so that's like a good option, but that's pretty complex. It's a little bit unreliable. Heavenly Grace is a lot more consistent. It purges grip, it purges nightmare, and if you Heavenly Grace asleep and then Bane grips, the grip is just not going to last very long. It's going to last 2.5 seconds, which is pretty bearable. Coming in at number 3 is Chaos Knight. This is one I'm a huge fan of, because not only is CK good against Bane, just like because of units, you know what I mean? That's like a common theme against Bane. It's like just units to purge sleep, just he can't kill them, etc. But even in the lane, CK is good against Bane. Why? Because CK has stupid good base stats. He also has a stun, and therefore a great thing to do against Bane in general is just kind of chuck your stun at him and let your 4 or your 5 trade with him. And so yeah, that is a really good option in my opinion. I'm a huge fan of this matchup. Next up, let's talk about Magnus. This is a hero that, funny enough, I always felt like, I'm like, maybe I don't have to talk about it. Surely, it's like, you know, it's got a 48% win rate. People kind of just stink at Magnus. It's a hard hero, really hard hero. But I'd still want to talk about it because you're going to see a lot of it in your pubs. I think it's like number 5 in most picked right now. So yeah, let's get into it. The first one is Ursa. Reason being is number 1. You can go Axe, which is an interesting take against Magnus, right? RP is something that naturally is the carry killer in the late game. If a carry BKBs, you RP them, bada bing, bada boom, you kill him. But Ursa, if he wants to, can go Axe. So if you RP him, he just dispels it, right? Gives him a hard dispel. Kind of a weird take, but it's definitely an option. On top of that, in the laning stage, you naturally beat Magnus later on into the lane, so you kick Magnus out of the lane. Magnus as a hero, as an offlaner, generally needs to stay in the lane, and so this is really good. Don't try to pressure Magnus early on. You're gonna feed, okay? Literally though, I see Ursus just run into Magnus's early on into the lane. They tank a shockwave, they tank the wave, and they lose the trade. Don't do that. Wait for your 3, wait for your 4, your 5, your phase, and then go in. Don't go in too early. You will feed. On top of that, one thing I do like about Ursa as well, he's a hero that naturally, if he does get horn toss skewered, he kind of has a good way to man up or get out. He naturally has a little bit of mobility, and of course, if you get skewered into a bad position, you can pop in rage and try to disengage. Next up, we have Ricky. I really love Ricky against Magnus. It's just such a good matchup. As a carry, as an offlaner, whatever you're playing Ricky as, it doesn't really matter. It's just good for a couple reasons. Number one, smokescreen. Probably the best ability in the game against Magnus, like unironically. If Magnus goes for a horn toss skewer onto your teammate, you can smokescreen and save them, prevent the skewer. If, in general, a team fight's going on, and you guys are initiating on let's say, a jug, okay? What is the common thing that happens against Magnus? You go on his teammate, he follows up with a counter initiation RP, he gets a 2 or 3 man RP, the jug gets saved, and the jug turns. You can't really do that against smokescreen. It's possible, but it's very unlikely, right? You can imagine why. If Magnus tries to counter initiate and there's a smokescreen on the ground, smokescreen has a deceivingly high radius. Even like based on how it looks, it's a little bit larger than it even looks. And as a result, what happens most of the time is Magnus tries to go in, he gets hit by this smokescreen, he gets clipped by it, and then he's just kind of standing in the middle of the fight. And so yeah, that matchup, it's really good. I'm a huge fan of it. And if the Magnus is pretty poor, which happens in a lot of games, and you're a carry, you have Diffusal, you can actually solo kill him a lot of the time. And finally is Disruptor. I'm going for a bit of an off-brand support. Other counters to the current version of Skewer Magnus is Rubik and Skywrath for their instant disables, but I like Disruptor as well. And there's a couple reasons for this. I think Disruptor's pretty good against Mag and lane. You can chip him down. Mag naturally has sustain issues. Disruptor's good at chipping. Glimpse is naturally good against Magnus if he goes for a skewer combo onto someone. Even if he connects or doesn't connect, it doesn't matter. You can glimpse him back, and that's an easy kill. And finally, if he goes in for the horn toss combo and you see it coming, you can put down your static storm, prevent the skewer, and secure a kill. Next up, let's talk about Silencer. Silencer is a hero that is dominating right now at a 53% win rate. It's doing extremely well. So here's a couple counters. Number one, Abaddon. I wanted to save Abaddon for here. Abaddon is definitely one of the best heroes against Silencer. And you might be like, oh, but speed, how can you say that? It's like global. You can't ulti and purge your teammate. It's like, guys, it doesn't matter. That's not why you're picking it. It's the other spells. I don't even think global a lot of the time is like the reason why people lose pubs to Silencer. I mean, does global matter? Of course it does, right? Like, it's global. But I think people kind of just lose track of like Arcane Curse and Silencer E, and then they're just like taking, unironically, like 900 damage. It's quite comical when these people are just walking around and they're just dying. They have no idea why, or they just don't even, like, literally I've watched Ember Spirits die from like half HP to a Silencer without realizing when I'm watching these low MR pubs. It's really funny. And so when you pick Abaddon, just purge Arcane Curse, purge Last Word, and your impact is going to be more than enough. Of course, as well, if at any point of the game you can manage to afford a Lotus Orb, you also then have a great answer to purge Global Silence. And at that point of the game, then Silencer becomes practically worthless against Abaddon. Next up is Lycan. Units kind of just destroy Silencer. Not only does Lycan not really care about Silencer Q, or even Silencer E, or even Global for that matter once he's used his ulti, he just kind of eats Silencer alive. And finally is Medusa. Medusa buys Manta, so she purges everything from Silencer. Silencer doesn't do any burst damage. Silencer doesn't really set up ganks on Medusa. Yeah, globaling to prevent Stone Gaze is okay. It is something. There's a lot of disables that prevent Stone Gaze. See, I don't think you can really specifically argue that that's why you would want to pick it, and therefore, Medusa in general counters Silencer. And finally, last but not least, is Skywrath Mage. This hero, surprisingly, I was looking at win rates, has a 52% win rate right now. Really high. And so yeah, let's get into it. The first one is Nature's Prophet. Now I know, it's like, this is the lowest win rate hero in Dota, blah, 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 it's a bad hero. Okay, if you know how to play Nature's, alright? If you know how to play Nature's, don't just go pick Nature's when you see Skywrath. If you know how to play Nature's, and you're actually good at it, then you can pick it as a counter. Why? The Treants dumpster Skywrath in lane, okay? If you pick it as a position 5, you can dumpster Skywrath in lane. As an offlaner, dumpsters him in lane, right? You can even pick it as a safe laner, dumpster him in lane. He just simply cannot deal with the units. Same reason why Naga and Beastmaster counter Skywrath, which I'll get into in a bit. But there's that. On top of that, natures can itemize in a lot of different ways, okay? What is the counter to Skywrath? Force Staff, Glimmer Cape, right? If you Force Staff out of Skywrath ulti, he generally lacks burst. On top of that, does Nature's Prophet generally care about Skywrath silence? Not really. Yes, of course it prevents him from TPing out, but assuming he's TPing in and just manning up, he doesn't care if he gets silenced. He doesn't play around kiting in and out like a Jug. He's not worried about getting off, net or mirror image. Even he doesn't really need to get off anything. And so when Prophet TPs in, he doesn't care about Skywrath. If he's a core, he's gonna go BKB, he's gonna go Orchid, can solo kill Skywrath, no problem. Dumpsters him in the lane. In general, I'm a big fan of this matchup. Because of the way you can itemize as a core, as a support, you can kind of just get around Skywrath in almost any way. Next up is Dazzle. This one's kind of interesting, but basically, as a 5, the reason why you dumpster Skywrath as a 5 is because you can't man up to Poison Touch of Skywrath, right? So Skywrath just simply has to run away. You naturally deal with Skywrath's chip damage in lane quite well because you have a heal. You prevent Skywrath's burst with Shallow Grave, and your ultimate is particularly good against Skywrath as a result of the fact that it reduces armor. Skywrath naturally has no armor, so like in this massive ass AoE that you can't even see, Skywrath just gets dropped to like -3 armor in a fight, and all of a sudden Skywrath is taking like 10% more than pure damage from auto attacks, and he just insta-dies. So yeah, this matchup kind of just works in many different ways. You can also rush a Force Staff and rush Glimmer Cape as your natural itemization. Coming in at number 3 is Naga Siren. This one, I'm not even really going to explain. It's good against Skywrath for like almost all the same reasons Nature's is. You just send units at Skywrath in lane, you solo kill Skywrath at any point in the game, and you buy a Manta style so you purge his combo. And finally is Beastmaster. Basically, Skywrath insta-dies to your units. If at any point in the fight he gets connected on with a boar, he's basically guaranteed dead. He can't deal with physical damage. Beastmaster is all physical damage, including the fact that he buffs his teammates' physical damage. The Hawk is really nice against Skywrath because Skywrath plays a very ninja-based pick-off style of Dota. As a result, if you can scout him out, it's a very easy kill, and there's not much Skywrath can do. So this is one of the worst matchups in the game for Skywrath, and that is Beastmaster. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you learned a lot about meta counters for these 5 heroes, Tiny, Bane, Magnus, Silencer, and Skywrath. If you did, make sure you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys there. Peace!
And that's all, but remember, before you leave, come on, before you tune out, subscribe to the GameLeap website where we are going to help you get to the next rank. If you're stuck, click the link down below, and I'm out. Peace.